Mike McCool here in the Royal Examiner studio, and with me today is Sandra Bosley. She is the Executive Director of Preservation Historic Winchester. Is that the correct name?
That's it.
You know, we're going to talk a little bit about just preserving our history and our buildings and some of the projects they've worked on in Winchester, and we've tried to do some of that here in Front Royal. I think we're a little behind, but, we're trying. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the organization and your role there?
Okay. So we were founded in 1964. We started probably similar to how most preservation societies start. There was a house called the Conrad House, and it was in danger of being demolished for a parking lot.
Yes. Yeah.
Parking,
we
right?
need parking lots, but
We do, but this was like a 1790s,
Oh, wow.
grand mansion.
Right.
And our group was, people around the town that had finally had enough. And they got together and fought for about 6 years trying to find some way to save this house. We were going to lease it. We were going to, offer other things that could go in that building.
Sure.
Offer other places that we could tear down instead of this house.
Right.
We just couldn't pull it off. But that 6-year struggle really brought the preservation community together in Winchester.
Right.
So that's how we started a historic district, which reviews buildings before they're demolished. We did a lot of survey work, which kind of documented what we had and figured out, where all the really cool stuff was.
Right. There's a lot of it. Every community's got a lot of cool stuff, don't
Yes.
they? Sometimes we don't see the gems that we have in our community until they're gone.
Yep. So that was what we tried to do. And when we were working on that, we found out that South Loudon Street in Winchester has a lot of really old log buildings.
Right.
And we didn't, you can't see them. A log building is basically invisible.
Right. They've covered them up, and
Yep. So if you've been in Winchester, there's a little log cabin, 311 South Loudon Street. And that was the very first project that we did. The Salvation Army was going to tear down that house to put in more parking.
Sure.
So our group got together and we had raised a pool of money and we purchased this house. And we were able to preserve the log building, and we took the siding off to prove that it was a log building.
Exactly.
So it's still there. You can still see it. And that was kind of the start of us proving you can save a building and have it live a second life and still be, contributing member of society.
Sure. Yeah, there's like you say, a lot of these things are covered up with a Band-Aid, to kind of make it, and then we don't realize what's just happened right behind me here. We had a log building that had the T111 on the outside, and it looked like a dump, but yet what it was, it had been moved there years ago. One of our doctors, what's the Garrison House downtown, what the rumor is that this was his surgical office, because moved over here. It was also, they say, one of the first post office in Front Royal, but it wasn't in the historic district. It had been moved over. This area, like where we're at today, was kind of like where they had the outskirts of town. Right. This is where the slaves lived that they had back in the, early during that period of time. And but they just built a lot of little places, and so they said they want to get rid of something. Well, let's move it over there, and someone will move, into it.
Yeah.
So, but the building was divided in half. Half of it's still there. Again, so many people, no one knew about it because it was covered up for years, and people lived in it, and it's just, then all of a sudden now it's gone. And they said, "Oh, we didn't know." I said, "Well, we've been trying to tell you for years, but but we have a historic district. Now you've published some books,
yes.
And she brought her latest book. Mark, why don't you zoom in here on her latest book? I call this a coffee table book, but this is what you read in the doctor's office, and and you start turning pages, and it's interesting. It's good stuff. You know what I mean? It's not stuff you read in the newspaper every day. It's a lot of historical information, and these are the kind of things that are so cool. And we've done similar things. The newspaper published some books over the years, but we haven't had anything quite the caliber of this in Front Royal. So these are well received. But I hear you're working on another book.
So not a book.
Well, excuse me.
So
a project.
Our next project is one of the things that I think was first printed in the 1990s was the Doors of Winchester poster.
Right.
And that has remained a perennial favorite.
Sure.
People are still trying to get a hold of them, and they're very scarce quantities. So we thought we republished our original book. This would be a good time to see if we can do this poster.
Sure.
And really, put like all the pictures that are in here very condensed in one place, and you can just look at it and experience Winchester doors in one place.
The doors is an interesting thing. We just did a story about replacing your door and stuff, and I'm looking through all these thousands of pictures of doors and just the character that doors have. And when you look at a house, first thing you see is the door.
Yes.
And sometimes, and I'm looking, and now that you're aware of these things, that's what you do. You look everywhere and you see, and some of them just have no charm at all. Right. I painted our door red just so you could see it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But again, there's not much history in a old metal door from Lowe's. But a lot of these older homes just have craftsmanship and character.
Yes.
And you look at these houses in these pictures, and you see all the little trim and the filigree or whatever they call that. There's what I call it, and all the cornices and just the work and the architect. We have places in this country that still have that, but you go through Europe, you really see it, it just adds that charm, But we mentioned those old houses. We've tore down some here to build an auto parts store and different things like that. And sometimes, old houses have to go. They just been neglected too long. But that's part of our charm in the city. I think that's what sets Winchester, any town, Front Royal, they look at that charm. People come from the city and all they see is concrete. So is that along the lines of what you...
Yeah, that's very similar to what we've experienced in Winchester, because we have, our walking mall downtown.
Sure.
And for a while it was getting pretty scary down there. All the box stores were moving out to the malls and the strip malls. It was kind of empty, but we were able to leverage, the charm of the buildings.
Sure.
And it's really transformed it from like a box store kind of mentality to little restaurants and specialty shops.
Right.
And really made it a special place downtown.
I think the boutique look is coming back, isn't it? We're seeing that on Main Street now. We've revitalized our Main Street. Yes. And all it takes is just like one or two people to kind of get it started. Yes. And then it takes off.
Yes.
So what's your next project? You got doors, but I'm sure you got a lot of stuff on in the hopper there.
So the next thing that we do every year at PHW is a holiday house tour. And this is, our big fundraiser of the year. So we usually try to get about 5 private homes to open up for us the first weekend of December. And, decorated to the nines. Yeah,
and you mentioned that some of those old homes, and I've been in them during the holidays, they're just something about mantles and the trim and where you can put these decorations. It's just like, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. But it's charming. I mean, it's just great. It's like the Hallmark moment, isn't it? Yes. Yeah. So you have any trouble getting people to open their doors?
It's always hard because we try not to get the same places, over and over again.
Yeah.
But, there's still about 1,000 some buildings that are, historic in our historic district.
Sure.
So we've been at this I think this is our 47th year.
All right.
It's getting a little hard.
Well, you can, after a couple of years, they can come back.
Revisit, yeah.
Revisit, that's a good word, to recycle,
Right.
But what's the difference between, this is something I always wonder about, what's the difference between something historical and just old?
It's a tough question.
Yeah.
So if you go by like a kind of legal standpoint, once you hit 50 years, you start qualifying as a historic building.
Okay.
So like in Winchester, now we have some ranch houses in our historic district, and they're historically contributing buildings.
Sure. 60s architect,
60s architecture.
Yeah, and it's funny, it is totally different, isn't it?
It is.
The walls and the ceilings go up and jut out. But it's funny, when I was growing up, you see the antique plates on cars. It used to be 25 years you had an antique car. I'm thinking, I had one of those, and so maybe we need to go back a little farther, you think about, but it's true. Sometimes things are just old, and other times they're more valuable. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, it's a tough thing in Winchester too, because a lot of our houses were like vernacular working man houses.
Sure, sure.
But you don't want to erase the history of the people who originally built and lived in that place.
Right. It's like the old Sears Craftsman homes.
Yes.
There's some charm about those, aren't they? I mean,
Yes.
they were just stick, or I guess now what we would call them modular homes,
home, yeah.
and just cram them up in a couple days, but
Yeah.
they've stood this test of time. You know,
Right.
it's funny I think we just built things better in the earlier years. There was pride in our work, and
Yes.
and we weren't so much worried about how quick it could get up.
Right. We wanted to make sure we had a legacy for people
Yeah,
to
yeah.
leave behind for your family.
Yeah. It's funny, I was down in Biloxi, Mississippi in 1969. Now that's historic, okay? And then we had a category 5 Hurricane Camille came through there. It's funny, Interstate 10 was gone. There's just a few pieces of asphalt sticking up. But the houses that stood back up on the hill had all been in the early 1900s. Didn't even blow a shingle off those things. And yet every hotels that were 5-story hotels just have a water pipe sticking up out of the ground, Things were gone completely. And yet these old homes that was just a little windstorm,
Yeah.
It's built different, I guess.
It is.
It's built different. I always think about that when I look at these homes. Like, we have a few projects. Hopefully we can get you all involved in getting this thing working down here. But we do have a lot of people in Front Royal that are similar mindset of you in Winchester, and we want to maybe we can encourage them to, because you do get beat up.
Yes.
Is that right?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
We are always the bad guys. I
Yeah.
mean, because we're impeding progress.
Right.
We're impeding businesses because you've got to expand.
Sure.
We're just crazy old people who have like a fixation on the past.
Sure.
Just
Hey, it is what it is, right? So tell me, do you live in a historic home?
by a technical definition,
It's 50 years old, right?
It is 50 years old.
Yeah, that's so. We'll let it go there.
Yeah.
Sandra, anything else you want to talk about?
I would just.
Do you need volunteers? You looking for
Yes.
members? We're in Warren County, but people watch this all over the place and
Right.
want to be. You can live in Warren County and
You
still
can.
participate in Winchester, right?
Yes. So we are a membership organization. So we're pretty reasonable. We're 25 for a single. 30 for a single and 55 for a family.
Okay.
And we have a website where you can kind of find all that
Sure.
information. We do always need volunteers for house tour because we help staff the homes and help give tours.
If you volunteer, you get in. You don't have to
You
worry
do.
about standing in line.
Right, you get to see the house, and usually you get a little preview of the
Sure,
building
sure.
before everyone
Yeah.
gets there.
Yeah.
We also have a bow and dough shop, which runs mid-November to early December. That is part of the house tour.
Sure.
So if you're looking for holiday gifts this season, come visit us. We are in the Hexagon House.
Yeah, I think
Which-
I've seen this place.
We are-
Where's this located at?
We are at 530 Amherst Street.
Okay.
So if you've been in Winchester a long time, I tell people it's across from the old A&P.
Yeah, and everybody knows where that is. But
Of course,
Yeah.
if you live in Winchester.
that's like this building here. We bought this building in, say, 1980. It was built in 77, right? It was a speed shop for 6 months. Then it was empty. So I tell people we've been here. Where are you at? I've been here for a long time. And they said, we're down there. Oh, that's where that speed shop was. How can they remember that? I've been here for, 40 years.
Oh, yeah.
But they remember the speed shop was only here 6 months. So it's kind of the same way. We put a label on something,
Right.
and that's what it is.
Yep.
Well, we really appreciate all the work that you do and your organization. It's a great work. I think we do need to preserve our history. It's a challenge,
Yes.
very challenging. And, where do you just can't preserve everything?
No.
And, but, we're seeing people moving back into that realm. I think we're seeing, we go through generations of time. And you see that?
Yeah, because
Young
it comes
people
in.
it comes and goes in waves.
yeah.
Phases. So anyway, all the hippies of the 60s now are back in the preservation, That's what we're doing. Well, Sandra, again, we really appreciate you coming in. We'll put all the information below the story, your website, and all the information. We'll do that, and people can get in touch with the organization in Winchester, and hopefully we can we have one in Front Royal too. So, we have the Warren Heritage Society, and they do more than just preserve buildings, obviously, but they preserved really historical building, Bell Boyd Cottage and all those kind of things that happened back in the 1800s. But our history is important. We need to make sure we don't repeat the things that are good and don't repeat the things that are bad.
Exactly.
Thanks again. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.